Frederick Douglass, Republicans, coming next for George. I gave him your book. He read it. He loves it. Now he's got to learn to use it.
I just realized you guys can't hear the music, can you?
No.
Nope. So that means, well, we're just going to have to go without the music today, folks. I have, this technology, I should have tried to check a few things out before I started using this other setup. So anyways, welcome everybody to another edition of the Liberty Collaborative Podcast. It is Thursday, January 15th, 2026. It's been a whole year, I think, since we've been back. And with me, as always, I have Mike K. Carl Smith and Chris Coyle. So, guys, Happy New Year. It's good to see everybody.
Wow.
Happy New Year.
What an elite in, K. Carl, 2026. We got a bushel basket full of issues to talk about today.
There's no stopping the issues, I tell you.
Man.
So where do you guys want to start? Do you want to start Minnesota, Venezuela? I mean, there's so much to dive into.
You know, Aaron, you and I were talking before we got on today about reminding people as we start the new year that what makes Liberty Collaborative different, what we believe our goal is to give you more content that other people will give you. Remember, the media, we know the mainstream media by complete omission doesn't report stuff. But even when they do, they leave out important information. And then context. Why does it matter? What does it matter to me? What does it mean? And K. Carl, to your point, we got so many things that have all sorts of implications about individual liberty, about standing up for truth. Just amazing. Michael, K. Carl, what are your thoughts in terms of all the stuff, as Aaron said, that happened? What's the one that's jumps out at you as most important for people to understand what the implications are?
Well, the interesting thing from my perspective is that all of this stuff is important, right? Which makes it almost impossible to digest, right? And to a large extent, it turns people off and then they just sort of check out. And when that sort of stuff happens, then what you see occurring is what we've had here in Aurora. We've just elected a majority communist city council, right? And so, but let's take Minnesota. Let's start there, because I think that when you take a look at Minnesota and you look at what the leadership of that state and that city, what they're advocating is for people to come out and to protest and cause problems. But in the same breath, they're saying that it's somebody else, it's ICE, it's Donald Trump that's doing it.
Yeah, let me first say that. Let me apologize for wearing my Urkel reading glasses because I couldn't find my own. So I had to put my Urkel glasses out.
You look very professorial.
Yeah. I just summed up this way. People always talk about rights and liberty, but they never talk about responsibility.
Yep.
They both go hand in hand. And I'm talking about in Minnesota. You cannot interfere with police operation or military operation. Yeah, you got the right to do it, but there's a responsibility that comes with that. You can't block the middle of the street and thinking that the law enforcement people don't think that's an ambush probably is going to happen. So they're kind of concerned about that. So this whole thing about liberty is great, but what very few Americans understand, especially young people, it also goes hand in hand with responsibility. That's what's missing.
Interesting historical context, you guys. K. Carl, you can, Michael, Aaron, correct me here and fill in the gaps. But generally speaking, our listeners ought to understand that in the civil rights movement, there was real debate between, if you will, Martin Luther King sort of group and other groups that wanted to use violence. They wanted to use direct, forceful action. And as I recall, K. Carl, Michael, and Aaron, there was this internal debate that no, you will then give people a reason to be against us, that we should follow laws, but use this approach of a silent, strong, but peaceful expression to make our case known. And in this case, there's so much law and precedent and principles being stepped. It's a tactic of the left guys, I think, where when the rules don't suit them, they throw them all out.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's amazing to me how these individuals, and I'm all for your First Amendment. I'm all for protesting peacefully. You go out there with your signs, go out there with your bullhorns, yell, scream, whatever it is you want to do. But when you start throwing frozen water bottles, when you're blocking off roads, you are then putting yourself in a position where you're breaking the law. You're impeding federal government agents to carry out their job. And I mean, that lady that got shot, lost her life. Good, I think her last name was. Terrible situation. She put herself in that situation. Any loss of life is terrible. Why were you not home with your younger kids? Why were you out there in the street? This is my question that I can't seem to answer. Why were you putting yourself in harm's way, been there all day long, try to hit an officer and expect not to have anything happen? And I was listening to the news this morning, and her wife came out and said, "Oh, I didn't know they were using real bullets. I thought they were fake bullets." Like, these people don't understand. It's like some cosplay for them. Like, oh, I'm just going to go out there. I don't know what I'm protesting for, but let's go out there and have fun, get hit with pepper spray and chemical agent projectiles. I don't understand it. Like, I've gone to rallies, I've gone to protests, but at the end of the day, just like when I was in my law enforcement military career, my goal was to go home to my family, not to get shot and do something stupid. And now there was another shooting, I guess, yesterday. Some guy got shot in the leg, and these illegal immigrants basically ambushed some ICE agents. And one guy got shot in the leg, ran into his house, and then barricaded himself. And then they had to go in with an extraction team. At what point are people going to wake up and say, yeah, we're going about this the wrong way? It's going to get more dangerous out there for people.
Yeah. Aaron, I would say is that from their perspective and the people that are leading the charge on this, it's not the wrong way. They want these people to be placed in situations that ultimately cause bigger and more escalation of tension and potential for people to actually get hurt. Because when people get hurt, then they can double down on what they're doing. And I would go back and just say, if you look at even the civil rights movement, there was the guys saying, hey, let's do peace, but they had their partners on the other side supporting them by instigating riots and things like that. So I don't think even the civil rights stuff that we're looking at here is as clean as it was presented or has been.
Yeah, certainly. Michael, if I can add on to what you're saying, the way these narratives get spun up and then they keep spinning, and the rule of just keep repeating it, and then everyone thinks it's a valid factual assumption foundation. So you've noticed people saying she was doing nothing wrong. She was innocent. I don't get it. So a former Navy pilot from Virginia, whose son is law enforcement, has a little blog, and he sent out the federal statutes that make it a felony to impede or interfere with the duties of a federal officer. So what he pointed out is this ICE Watch group she's a part of, that's a federal crime. That's a conspiracy. So right away, she and her wife, it's still hard for me to say that, not stumble, are violating a federal law. Then to your point, Aaron, people don't seem to understand, if you're on the street and there's a federal law enforcement action going on and you're staying there, an argument could be made that you were sort of enveloped in the situation beyond your control. But that's not what happened. They drove into the scene and parked sideways in the street, right? And then, of course, Aaron, we talked about, you guys know, an automobile, it's well settled, is a dangerous weapon. You can crush people. A sidearm can't stop a car. You can only stop the driver of the car. So when you're told to stop, as everyone's saying, you've already violated a number of laws, probably state laws, Minnesota civil laws, ordinances in the city. And then to finally move the car, it's not for someone to divine your intentions, it's your actions. And so the left, the media, has totally overridden all of that, trying to create a narrative based on sort of what people may have intended. Sorry, it's what you do.
Well, the left has no problem of having people and they become expendable in order to push the cause or support the cause. Um, I want to dovetail in what Mike said, and I agree. Is here's the problem: on the left, they think they have a right to be violent. That's the problem.
Boy,
You
well
have a
said.
right to protest, but you don't have a right to be violent.
Right.
And that's where, especially during the time of the George Floyd and those type of things that was going on, people thought they had a right to be violent, and they don't get that, and that's where law enforcement comes in to save the day, and that's Marxists. Marxists think they have a right to be violent.
Michael, so dead on. When you look at Nancy Pelosi saying something like, well, it's okay to let it off a little steam as they burned down half of Minneapolis a year or two ago. When you look at Schumer on the steps of the Supreme Court, shaking his fist, saying, we'll bring wrath down. There is such a history of their top leaders directly inciting violence. And the media doesn't hold them accountable. And then they turn around and call Trump a king or an authoritarian. Wow.
Yeah, it's
dystopian.
It is crazy because what they do, and the media, of course, is in support of this. They push out an alternate reality for people to grab onto, right? And then anybody that pushes against that or attempts to bring forth like reality, then you become the bad guy. They start attacking you. That's what's going on. And I mean, I can't tell you how many people I've spoken to, and the things that come out of their mouth, it's jaw-dropping because it has nothing to do with what's really going on.
Michael, to your point, guys, Aaron, right now in Virginia, the new attorney general during the campaign, you remember this, was caught text messages talking about having 2 bullets to shoot these 2 people. He's now the attorney general of Virginia. So Mondami, they're sort of little by little choosing to use violence and inciting violence as part, and it's becoming accepted. You know, what they haven't figured out is the right stays quiet because they carry a big stick, and they're not going to do generally. The violence is never the way. It's not the American way. What I hope will happen is conservatives. I tell people this all the time, and Aaron, it'd be interesting from your perspective, former law enforcement. I say to people, pull out your phone and record just like they do, but show the context. And I'll give you an example. I don't want to throw it back. Jackie Holman was on our show last fall. Remember, she talked about being at the No Kings protest outside a Tesla dealership. And listeners who don't remember that show, you look back. What she said was she's walking along with a guy. Remember this? Older guy, seems very nice, chatting like someone you'd meet at a parent-teacher association meeting. I don't know, an event. And they're chatting nicely. And he says to her, well, it'd be okay if someone took out Trump. And she said, what do you mean? Like assassinate him? He goes, yeah, I'd be okay with that. This is a 70-year-old guy marching along, no kings, and he is for assassinating a president. Wow. That just shows you how insidious and deeply this weird philosophy is permeating.
It's been going like that for a while because on college campuses, our young kids today, they're indoctrinated to view conservatives as somebody who should not be living or be allowed to live. I mean, I'm told this by my nephews who are in college now. That's the language. So it's not surprising that after they come out of college, some of those kids still believe that, and they take it to the street and they hear these leaders talk. And some of them are so simple-minded enough, they will pull the trigger.
Well, think about how bizarre this is. So we're talking about sort of this amazing divide. You know, I joked with someone, you can debate why Minnesota happened. You can debate how it happened, right? But you can't debate that it happened, right? Where it happened, exactly. Well, let's switch to Iran. Here you have the people of Iran, and the numbers are in dispute. They're saying 12,000, but there's reports that the dictatorship has killed 20,000. I mean, tens of thousands of innocent protesters. Where is the media? Where are the people supporting them? It's zero. And so when Trump says, hang in there, we're going to do something, everyone's sitting there going, Okay, but why aren't they speaking up for the people of Iran?
Yeah.
It's mind-boggling, you know. But
The left would excuse find a way to sympathize with a child that has a bomb strapped to them. They'll excuse that.
yeah, yeah.
And if you take that child out because the child has a bomb strapped to the oh, what you doing to the children? It is a mental illness.
And Aaron, the thing that worries me, and guys, it's one thing to have debates on policy, right? We often, Aaron, we go around, Michael, we learned this from you. We're not in personalized politics. We're not political parties. Values and issues divide. We can have a reasonable civil dialogue about differences. But the left appears to want to torque every rule, every institution when they don't get their way. And they don't want to go too far afield, but a Supreme Court case just came down that gives a Illinois congressman the standing and jurisdiction to sue Illinois that keeps counting ballots days after the election's over. And the Illinois court said, sorry, you don't have standing. Well, the Supreme Court majority opinion written by Roberts says you do. It's an election. You spend time and money. You know, the two dissenting justices, this new far left one, every single time. And of course,
Ketanji Brown
or Sotomayor, sorry. Yeah, Brown, right? These dissents basically saying it's a waste of time. Like, someone who's running for office shouldn't have the right to question why, because it's Illinois and he's a Republican.
Right.
With no thought, it appears to me, to what the constitutional right at issue here. So I think the dangerous thing that our listeners need to understand is when they start trying to undermine and twist and abuse our legal process, our precedent, the things that make our country unique, the rule of law, that to me is really scary.
It is.
Hey, Chris, you saying she didn't have a thought. It is a thought. It's the wrong school of thought.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
and with this Minnesota stuff, guys, I have working on my Juris Masters, I've been using this AI platform called Open Case. It's just a much quicker search than using some of the other case law search engines that are out there that usually have to pay for. So I just typed in about Minnesota, the ICE agents, federal agents' use of force. And basically it says that both Minnesota and federal law treat shooting into a vehicle as the use of deadly force lawfully only when the officers reasonably believes it is necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm. And that great bodily harm is what people are missing. When she decided to hit the gas instead of get out of the vehicle, place the hands behind your back, walk backwards to my voice, go down to one knee, other knee, that whole spiel that we give as law enforcement agents to people who are coming out of a high risk stop or something like that. When she decided to turn that wheel and her wife said, drive, baby, drive, and she smiled and hit the gas and then hit him, that is enough, in my perception, would be to qualify for great bodily harm. And there was really nowhere for him to go. I mean, she hit him. Apparently he had internal bleeding afterwards. So this is the narrative that they're leaving out of the legacy media. They just want to get everybody riled up on both sides, but they don't ever have anybody come on and say, well, let's look at what Minnesota statute 609-066 says for use of authorized deadly force, or what the federal justice manual says, 1 through 16, where it talks about the Justice Department policy on how use of force is to be utilized. And again, there's that use of force continuum. I guess they're still teaching. I've been out of law enforcement for a while, but it's a sliding scale. If all of a sudden she says, okay, I'm getting out of the car, well, then they have to drop the way they're acting and they have to do contact controls, put her under restraints, and then go through that process. But what people are forgetting is as soon as she turned that wheel and she made that conscious decision to try to drive through that officer and hit him, I feel, as sad as it is, that he had that right. And I think he was almost a 20-year veteran, he was pretty quick to get it out of the holster. And this wasn't the first time he was hit by a vehicle. So you also have that you have to remember that these people, these are guys and women that go to work every day and come home to their family, and that's their goal. And when you act stupid and you're going to do something to put yourself in a position where, hey, I've just authorized them to use deadly force against me. I mean, this is what needs to be brought out to people. Look, this is the law. This is how use of force works.
Yeah. Aaron, the thing that I would say is that, I mean, you're absolutely right. What you just described was an objective approach to reporting on this particular situation. But what we also observed is that within the hour of this thing happening, the mayor, the governor, they've all taken the stance that this is a murder and that it's something that is being instigated by Donald Trump, and it's been that way ever since. And they've
created a narrative construct, guys.
Yeah.
Again, one of the things we talk on this show about is do not accept flawed premises. Mm-hmm. Don't try and start debating people when the very premise. Look at the premise they've set up. They never use the word illegal immigration. They say immigration.
Right.
And they've cast this as if ICE is invading for no reason in Chicago, for example, nothing to do with crime, by the way.
Right.
But what's fascinating about this construct is read the news today. You can look it up. Testimony yesterday in D.C., number of officials admitted that there is many, and I may have this number wrong, was it 20,000, 200,000? It's a huge number. Maybe it's of Afghans that they didn't have their birth date, their name. They just let them go because they had screwed up the withdrawal, as we know from Afghanistan, botched it. But then they had all these Afghans said, yeah, I worked with the military. Okay, was anyone vouch you? Nope, go ahead. So these people around our country know where they are, what they're doing. We do know that the guy who shot the two people outside the Israeli event in D.C., remember that? The man, a fiance? He was one of them, the jihadists. So while they go, what are you doing in Minneapolis coming in our neighborhoods? Well, dudes, these people are the people they're after. Do you think they're prioritizing someone who had a parking ticket in El Salvador and happens to have come to our country?
Right.
They're prioritizing based on pretty good information that someone's living here. And because it happens to be next to you in Minnesota, sorry, but that's the truth. They got to go get them.
You know, and Chris and Mike, with the narrative that
there's an echo.
Yeah, I don't know where that's coming from,
All
but
right, stop.
With what you were saying about the narrative that it's Trump's fault, Trump's doing this, Trump's the dictator. I always ask people, well, where were all these riots and people protesting all the 5 million illegal immigrants that were removed from the country under the Obama administration? Nobody was in the streets. Nobody was protesting. He was removing illegal immigrants, but because it's Trump and the Trump derangement syndrome, I'm believing more and more every day that it's an actual diagnosis at this point, that you have one president that does it and nobody says boo, but because it's Donald Trump's administration, all hell breaks loose. You just can't make it up.
That's always been the strategy of the left, is to hide what they're doing when it coincides with what the conservatives have been doing. They always want to hide it. The thought I had, my thought hit me in the head here. People got to understand what law enforcement people, how they're trained. Mm-hmm. And I got to go back to my military days. And I'm just thinking, had that been me, a law enforcement person on that street, and this lady would have pulled off, I'm looking there. Why she's leaving? Are the bullets getting ready to fly around me? Why she want to get out here so quickly? Right. So all those things go into the mind of these law enforcement people want to get back home. They don't wake up every day and say, okay, who am I gonna shoot down today? That's not the mindset.
Nope.
The mindset is I want to get back home safely. But at the same time, I got to do what I've been called to do for protecting the citizens of this country. Get out the way, let ICE do their job, because there are people here who are here illegally. We got to find out who they are. Get out of the way. No. Stop interfering. When you interfere, you're going to pay the price.
So, guys, Aaron, with all the stuff, if I can, K. Carl, so well said, and maybe as a way to cap this off, it's pretty well known in people who train people who have concealed carry weapons that the premise or the foundation, legal use of force, justifiable legal use of force, has a number of factors, including, you can't be the instigator. Well, this lady was the instigator. And the person who is observing your actions has to see three things: weapon, intent, and capability. Well, car is a weapon.
Mhm.
The intent was pretty clear. The capability to injure was really clear. So if someone's got their hand in their pocket and they're shouting at a cop saying it's been called death by suicide by shooting, and saying, I have a gun in my pocket, I am going to kill you, coming at you, the person who kills them is legally justified if they had reasonable evidence or proof or so forth. So anyway, I just, what boggles my mind, guys, switching. So I talked to a guy the other day. I was on a fire rescue call in the woods, and I'm talking to the guy in the UTV as we're zooming along this snow-covered trail about Venezuela. And he says to me, well, questions of whether a country can go snatch another president. I mean, they're going to send in and grab Trump? Or are we going to go and take? And I said, what are you talking about? He stole the election. He killed literally, this guy wanted to start the whole thing, talk about a false premise, that Trump seizing that guy. And I said, well, did you know he was indicted in 2020 under another administration? So now we got the guy, right? And suddenly we've got the rest of the government infrastructure in there that's still kind of operating. So what are your guys' thoughts on what are all the legal implications, notwithstanding the foreign policy, but kind of what do we do now with Venezuela and all the dominoes that are starting to fall? Cuba's not getting any oil. And so they're worried that they're starting to, this is a pretty interesting time.
Yeah, well, very interesting. And then, of course, the other big fish in the pond is Iran, right? And what's going on there. I find it very interesting that people take the position, let's say go to Venezuela, that a sovereign country should be able to flood our country with drugs, right? And be host to our enemies, China, Russia, and otherwise. And we're just supposed to sit here and do nothing because they're sovereign. Well, my perspective is that once you begin to do anything, whether you're an individual or a country that actually attacks my country, then it's all hands on deck, because we can't stand for that to happen.
I don't know what they're doing, these other countries. Y'all need to leave Trump alone. He's crazy. He'll use his military. This is not Joe Biden you're dealing with here. This man is going to protect the United States, and that's the first duty of government, is to protect the citizens of this country.
Thank you.
That's the first duty. Douglas called it. Douglas said the first aim of government. No, he called it national government. The first aim of the national government is protection. And so once you find out what these countries are doing, bringing legal drugs here, they keep pumping them in, you can get away with it with Joe Biden. But that's not going to happen with Trump.
Yeah. And, K. Carl, to your point, there's been a nexus between terrorism and drug trade for years. You remember that they were trying to kill all the poppy fields in Afghanistan because they were making heroin, right? And they were fueling terrorism with the drug money. So drug money and terrorism, and we know now the Chinese providing all the precursors. I don't know if you remember the big sting in Ohio where they caught all these Chinese people selling on the internet the precursors for all these drugs, for fentanyl and all this stuff. So what they realized is we can accomplish two goals: generate money, right, and flood America with poison that will kill them. So to your point, to act like that's not a declaration of war, and when it's fused with a government that takes over legitimate election, and to hear this particular teacher at a prep school in Connecticut act as if Trump had no basis to go in, forget all the details, and he's teaching kids. Mind-boggling. But the nexus of drugs and terrorism have a long history.
Absolutely.
Wait, I missed that piece, Chris. What was the grade level of these children? This is high school. This is
So he's prep school up to 12th grade, right? High
prep
school,
school.
prep school.
Must be in
I'm
Connecticut.
not saying he's teaching that. I think that he's a gentle, wonderful person. I think he's a science teacher, but it just shows you that. And I'm smart enough. I respect him. He's my superior officer. I'm on a call, and he's a great person. But I just was incredulous of his means of argument. Uh, and then I said, look, there's the criminal question. Did they read him his rights? They probably did. But it sounds like they've got a lot of goods on this guy. Now, what's interesting is though, how do you navigate this? Trump said about the opposition leader who won and escaped at one point a week or two ago, oh, she's weak. She's weak. And I don't know what that was all about, but now he's meeting with her at the White House. And so they got to figure out how do you go into a truly a sovereign nation without taking it over, but how do you nudge it toward democracy?
Yeah, just a little bit of a clarification. The person that Trump is meeting with was a person that Maduro actually prevented from running, so she didn't actually win.
Okay,
right? And so, given that she wasn't in the election, I would argue that the extent to which she has she hasn't been shown or demonstrated through the process of being elected the ability to run. So I think that was the weakness.
Good. Okay.
Yeah.
Good clarification. But it's an interesting question because a lot of retired generals were on talk shows going, now that you caught the car in your teeth, doggy, what are you going to do with it? And so, it's perplexing. And clearly the people in Venezuela are not protesting. So there's probably a lot of police power left that's keeping them in line.
Well, that gets to the point of, well, what does success look like, right? And success could look like you go in and you've done some things and you facilitate a new Venezuela arising that is democratic, or it could be you just stop the dang drugs. Okay, it'll figure itself out, and if it starts to influence us again, we'll go back in and disrupt it again. So I'm not one who absolutely believes that you've got to have this, plan
right
that, through the end. But at the very least, what we've been successful at doing, what we are being successful at doing, is eliminating the presence of our enemies in this hemisphere, and we've been successful at depleting the supply of drugs into the United States.
Well, and having an ownership stake, Aaron, in the oil field, Venezuela, one of the biggest in the world, that gives us quite a card on the table because we've turned off the spigot of illegal tankers going to Russia, China. So it's a strategic card. But what I wonder there is, how does opposition, there's some great, by the way, I'm going to give them a shout out, the Free Press. I love what they write. I don't agree with everything they say, but really the most amazing authors and writers. And one writer wrote a detailed history of revolutions, and the French Revolution, our revolution. And what they point out, and the Free Press had some interviews, this is ugly, but guys, it's going to get to some shooting. It's going to get to some force. Because unless they can turn the armies and those people against the dictators, going home and texting pictures on Instagram of the protest is not a revolution. And so they're opining whether today's younger generation really realizes you're in a moment of history, an inflection point where you got to really figure this thing out, like sit-ins, stopping the economy, but in both these countries, the citizens have a chance to speak up, get organized, and sort of stop government from doing what it's doing. But very complex.
What revolution has never been violent?
Right.
I don't know one.
Yeah. Well, look at the French Revolution. One revolutionary group then killed the other group before it.
Yep.
And then it took cycles of violence and thrashing. For, as you remember, Napoleon just said, okay, I'm going to be in charge for a while.
Yeah, well, what revolution has actually ended up creating anything of real long-lasting substance except the American Revolution?
Well, and Michael, guys, K. Carl in particular, when you look at our founding and you look what George Washington did, people forget when Lafayette came over and you read about his biography, he said, I'm not joining a revolution. This is civil war. So there were a ton of people that were against the revolution. They were for England. And in our state in Connecticut, the history is quite clear. Everyone east of the Connecticut River, that's us, was part of the revolution, part of the movers in the Civil War. Everyone to the west were Tory. And that's where a lot of the guerrilla fighting was. So it was only us giving people control, people human rights, liberty, K. Carl, that helped when we won, right? We then kept moving and giving people representation, of course, the Constitution. But remember when George Washington was very clear to say, no, I'm not becoming a monarch. And that was the inflection point of moving to a true republic democracy.
And I think one of the reasons why we had Venezuela in the target, not only because of drugs, but our U.S. oil company spent billions of dollars setting up their business in Venezuela. And this guy, I can't think of his name, that's incarcerated in custody of the United States, he kicked the U.S. out and took him over.
It was his predecessor, Chavez, that kicked him out, and he just sustained the whole thing.
Yeah.
And stepped on the gas.
Yeah.
So money talks, man.
Aaron, should we wrap it up?
Yeah, let's wrap it up, guys. We're just at what are we at? I don't know, 30 something minutes, I think, somewhere around there.
Yeah, perfect.
So yeah, we can wrap this up. There'll be no outro music, just like there was no intro music. So I got to figure out what's going on.
Well, Aaron, before you go, I'll wrap up first, folks. I hope you will look up K. Carl, and this new book of his is nothing short of fantastic. It's at the right time and the right place. Karl Marx versus Frederick Douglass. And Michael, your book, I've started it, is fantastic. Guys, follow these two authors. Aaron and I try our best to get something out, but we're so busy stirring up stuff in our kind of blue states that we're up. But K. Carl, Michael, your writing is fantastic. I hope people follow you. So
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. I just want to close by saying we didn't get a chance to talk about this, but I just want to encourage our leaders in Washington, D.C. to get off their butt and solve this issue with these jacked up prices with Obamacare. I just met a man yesterday in Alabama, 58 years old, with the subsidies that was paid by the government for Obamacare. He was paying like $1,000 a month for his premiums with Blue Cross Blue Shield per month. Now the subsidy's been pulled. Now he's got to pay $4,000 per month. And my problem is, don't forget, with Obamacare, people were forced to take Obamacare.
Yeah.
Not physically, but through financial penalties. Now they're being abandoned. $4,000 a month, that's not a bill, that's a second mortgage.
But isn't that affordable?
You always use words, it's the opposite. It's the unaffordable care plan.
yeah.
The left always do that, right?
But K. Carl, guys, remember, if Bill Clinton got caught with the open mic when he said it. Remember, this bill screws small business and families. So what they did is they took money from one group, the haves, and they gave it to all these people on wealth. Basically, say they don't have income. They gave away free health care. How many was it? 40 million people? So he created a new subsidy in plain sight as if no one was watching behind the curtain. That's what's going on here.
Bottom line to all this is that we don't need the government involved in the private sector for healthcare. Leave it to the private sector, but make it where there's competition.
Yep.
And then the prices will drop.
Yep.
But when the government mandates that insurance company has to have everything in it, the price is jacked up. Then you put this fake money out there that disguises the real cost, and then when the fake money goes away, now the American people are stuck with an outrageous bill because government always put his foot in things and messes things up. That's what's going on.
We're supposed to be closing, but I love the irony here in hypocrisy, Michael, because they just changed the quote food pyramid because the old one was based on sugar and stuff. We have obese people. So if you're smoking, you're drinking, and you're eating Big Macs and guzzling down supersized gulp me cups of sugar, and then you go in, guess what, K. Carl? Obamacare covers it.
And, you got me on the road now. And why is the FDA approving MSG to feed us?
Yeah.
Other countries don't put up with that crap.
And then we insure and cover the quote
I'm
sickness.
sick of it. I feel like Roger Dangerfield. Nobody respects me, man. I'm an American citizen. Nobody respects me.
Aaron, that's the way to start our 2026 series right there.
All right.
Absolutely.
Michael.
And yeah, Mike, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I was just saying, as always, I encourage people to look beyond the veil. A lot of what a lot of people believe has nothing to do with reality. And when you take the position that even asking one or challenging the truth is a violation of your right to be a human, if you will, there's something wrong. Just seek the truth. Ask questions, ask lots of questions, and never take like what you hear from the news as gospel.
Hear, hear.
Yeah, good point. And for me, fellas, this was a great episode. Good to see you all this new year. A way to kick it off. And now, Chris, I want to go out and get a Big Mac and some fries and a soda. So I might have to do that before my radio show today.
Aaron, but you got to add 2 words: supersize that.
Supersize it.
With some whole milk.
Another great invention.
Yeah. Well, if they had raw milk, I might take them up on that.
Okay.
But anyways, well, guys, as always, remember,
Stay woke.
I don't know if you heard that, but it's stay woke. We'll see everybody next Thursday at 10:30 Eastern Standard Time for another Liberty Collaborative podcast. Have a great week and a great weekend.
Take care, guys.